Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's a time that you felt like you were being watched or followed? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A security guard was literally hiding amongst the stuffed animals in the storeroom, like you see in the movies. I worked midnight shift at Six Flags vacuuming. There had been some thefts by employees, so I'm in the storeroom and one of the toy shops looking at the various crap in stock when I noticed human eyes in with the big pile of stuffed animals, like that scene in E.T. Security dude thought he was going to get a bust. He went to a fair amount of trouble setting the trap. When I was a kid, I was watching Dukes of Hazzard in the living room, got the feeling I was being watched, turned around, and saw a guy staring at me from the porch. I screamed. My dad came running out from his bedroom, then saw the guy, and went back to get his gun. When he came out with it, the guy on the porch bolted into the woods, and my dad went out to chase him. We lived in a pretty isolated area, so I don't think it was just an accident that the guy happened to be on our porch. When I was young, I went to a corn maze with a friend of mine in Reno. Noticed a man with a camcorder following us both. When I pointed him out to my friend, we both decided to run through the corn. He followed us with this horrid smile the whole time, keeping the camera pointed at us the whole time. My parents just kept saying, "He probably thought you knew how to get out." But I knew this guy was a creep. That smile sticks in my mind still. Taking care of my dying grandmother at my uncle's home. Back then we thought he was a reformed artist. I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night from deep sleep. I didn't even know why. I just sat straight up immediately and opened my eyes. My artist uncle scurried away from behind me, where he must have been staring at me. Within months of my grandma dying, we figured out he was R-ing one of his daughters and got him sent back to jail for another decade. I hear he's out again. He should be locked up for life. He will never reform. Honestly, I don't believe that artists reform anymore. I was about 14 and did summer secretary cleaning work for my father at his small business. He had 3 buildings on the property: his offices, his storage, workshop, and a building he would lease out. I would notice a man from the leased space taking smoke breaks while I was out mowing the yard, but I didn't think much of it. Once my dad asked me to wash his motorcycle, and he left for a job site. I noticed the man was watching me longer and more intently than usual. Actually, my dad's foreman came out of the workshop and confronted the man, and he removed himself. Later that day, the man walked toward me, trying to start a conversation. Another one of my dad's employees confronted him and told him he had no business speaking to me. He said to go inside and keep all the office doors locked while I was working. Something about that guy creeps me out. Just a few days later, the police descended on the leased building and arrested the man. He was apparently a pedo who was attempting to live under a false identity in a new area. I was hiking at a state park with friends, but they had turned around and gone back to the car. I was alone on the trail, hadn't seen or heard anyone in a while, but my skin was crawling and it felt like someone was walking right behind me. I finally gave in and turned back, and there was a mountain lion on the trail behind me. He looked just as startled as me and twice as pissed off. Thankfully, he ran off instead of attacking, but I was a nervous wreck the entire way back to the trailhead, and I told the park rangers before I left. Living in an apartment at 19 with my now husband, and I'm in the basement doing laundry, and I feel incredibly uneasy. I turn around and look up, and there's a man in the bushes, in only his underwear, watching me through the basement window. I finish loading my laundry as quickly as possible, and he storms into the basement as soon as I head for the door. He tries to corner me, asking if I liked him watching me. I don't engage and keep the laundry basket between us. quickly working my way back to the door. I get out as he's yelling something that I don't understand because of his broken English. I run up to the third-floor apartment and break down in tears when I get through the door. My boyfriend was making dinner and asked what happened. He held me while I calmed enough to tell him. We wait until it's time to pick up my laundry from the dryer, and my boyfriend comes with me. He's just a few steps behind me, so when one of the apartment doors pops open as I'm going down the stairs, I'm startled but not terrified. The man pops up, trying to talk to me again. I don't interact, but I hear my boyfriend come around the corner and lay into him about being a creep and preying on young girls. My dude is big, scary, and intimidating. This man has no idea who he's messing with. I never did laundry there again, and immediately started looking for a new place to live. We broke our lease early after that incident, and I never had to live in an apartment again. Was house sitting for some family members while they were on vacation. One day, I couldn't shake the feeling like I was being watched. Looked outside, no suspicious cars or anything, even though I didn't have any evidence. I went around the house and shut all the blinds and curtains, called my boyfriend, and told him that I was super paranoid about being watched, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Nothing happened the rest of the week. The family returned and called me a few days later, asking if I had seen anything suspicious while I was there. When I asked why, it turned out 2 houses on the street were robbed. One of the houses was their next-door neighbor. This happened during the Christmas holidays, so the police surmised that the robber was camping out and watching the houses to see who was out on vacation. When I was growing up, a few specific cars used to park outside our house with someone just sitting inside. The cars and drivers changed every so often, but it was so constant and so unsettling that I started to note down the license plates. I could even still remember one now, 30 years later. It was there so much. My mother used to be creeped out too, but my dad always dismissed it. One time, we were driving home from a trip to Europe. We lived in the UK. And the same car followed us all the way from somewhere in France to our literal home. When we pulled up to our drive, the car that was following continued on along our road. After that, ever since then, I know someone was either watching us or protecting us. My dad did work for the government, but I'm convinced he was actually a spy. Since he retired, I've never seen cars parked outside their place. I think what most of these stories come down to is that inner feeling of being watched, that sixth sense or that instinct. And how many times do we deny it because we're like, we're just being paranoid. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes it's warranted. So maybe we should really try to listen to those more primal feelings sometimes, Be safe out there. When I was about, 7 or 8, I was walking my dog not far from home. This was in Darwin in the suburbs of Australia. I was walking around the block basically, done it many times before, and around this time after school, I'd had cars come by and slow down waiting for me to go past and then go into their driveway. This one particular time, it happened like this. The car slowed, I sped up to go past the driveway, expecting them to pull in. It didn't, and went further. So I again went past the next driveway thinking, okay, weird, but whatever. Surely they'll just park or pull in. The car kept repeating it. It was obviously not aiming for anywhere, and would start slowly moving again only when I moved. I felt like a deer being stalked, honest. I suddenly felt being hunted. But I also doubted myself, like I'm probably being paranoid. Maybe they're just dumb or don't know where to park. But I couldn't deny it long. I ended up sort of baiting them. I thought if I start running, they're going to get out and chase me. So I acted like I didn't realize what they were doing, and at a blind spot of a corner, I knew I went round it, then bolted into these bushes with my dog. Sat there until I knew they were gone. This was after having a school-wide notice of be aware, there's been cars following kids out of school. I know they were after me. Fuckers went round the block 3 more times while I hid there. I went home and eventually told my mum. I also told her specifically, "Don't tell Name, my sister. I don't want to scare her." I made sure I went with my sister any time she wanted to walk the dog from then on. FYI, she's my twin, but always been anxious. I was hiking on a trail through the woods when I suddenly got that something's watching you feeling. I looked to my left and there was a black bear about 6 feet away from me. Kinda gave me that awkward look dogs give you when they don't know why you're staring at them. Which would have been cute if, a 600-pound bear wasn't basically right next to me. I kept my eyes on him, slowly backed away, but it turned around and went back into the woods. I kept turning my head to look behind me the whole rest of the hike because I felt like it was following me. In 1990, while we were invading Iraq, I was in the U.S. Army and based in Fort Stewart, Georgia. My job one night was to walk around in a field where there were underground bunkers with ammunition in them and make sure nobody broke in. My tools? A walkie-talkie and an axe handle. No sidearm, no M16, just an axe handle. I walked around that field all night long inside my little chain-link fence, picking up rocks and hitting them with the axe handle, bored out of my mind as I was pretty sure Saddam Hussein wasn't going to attack the underground bunkers, and, if he did, my axe handle wasn't going to stop him. But for some reason, I still felt like someone was watching me the whole time. At around 6 a.m., the sun started coming up. I saw a hunter coming out of the woods toward me. For those that don't know, Fort Stewart is and was an open base that allowed anyone on, and they could buy hunting permits too. He had sat in a tree blind about 100 yards away, almost all night, watching me through his scope. He had a mason jar with some clear liquid and a bloated peach in it. He gave me a few sips of his homemade moonshine. It was nasty, but awesome at the same time. My first job was at a Dunkin' Donuts inside a gas station. I was 16 and my shift ended at midnight. At around 11 p.m. I'd start bagging up the trash, multiple big black bags, heavy with the day's discarded, messed up drinks and food they made us throw away at the end of the day. And then I'd have to take them out through the back door, propped open so I wouldn't get locked out, across the parking lot, which only had one light and no cameras, and haul them into a dumpster by throwing them over my head. I was not particularly strong, but had good technique. Anyways, I often closed alone except for the person working the gas station register, which meant no one was watching me in the parking lot. At one point, I creeped out, and suddenly when I looked around, I noticed the car parked back right there on the edge of the light, where it was hard to make out any details. I couldn't see who was in it or the license plate number or anything. After I noticed it, I had the girl from the gas station watch me from the back door, and after a couple of days, where the car kept showing up, I told my roommates about it. My male roommate came to the store about an hour before the close the next night and sat in the lot to watch me do the trash, flicking his headlights on to illuminate my path. As soon as the lights went on, the car that was waiting revved its engine and tore out of the lot. It came back the next night, but my roommate did too, and he kept coming back every time. I closed, and eventually, that car stopped showing up. I asked around, and the other closers had seen it too, but they also hadn't gotten any details. No idea what that was about to this day. Glad I didn't get kidnapped though. When I was 16 or 17, I went camping with some friends in a small beach town. The camping ground was basically right on the beach, with small dunes separating the grounds from the sea. At the top of the dune, there was a little deck area where you could sit and look at the view. The one night, friends and I were sitting there, goofing around, when an older man walked up to us and started chatting with us. He was also camping. He was obviously very drunk and offered us some of his alcohol from his water bottle. We honestly should have left when he first came, but we found him amusing because he was talking a bunch of nonsense, and as teens, we just thought it was a funny encounter. But the mood kind of shifted when he was telling a story and just bent down in the seat and a bit of my friend's leg hard. She had a big bruise the next day. Anyway, after he bit her, we said that we needed to go as our parents were probably getting worried. So we walked back to the camping grounds. In the middle of the grounds were small fields with some playground equipment on them. One side of the field was covered in hedges, and one side had some toilets and showers. We were hanging out at the jungle gym when I spotted the guy stand near the bathrooms looking our way. I ignored him, thinking he was just finding his way back to the campsite, but it gave me the creeps and kept me on high alert. A little while passes, and I'm looking around, and I see a lump near the hedges. It was dark outside, with a few spotlights scattered around, so at first I couldn't make out what it was. Then I saw it, and my blood ran cold. He was squatting by the hedges in the dark, just staring at us. My legs went numb, and my entire body felt like jelly. We ran back to our tents and told the adults what was going on, and we called the police. He was taken away that night. The image of him hunkered down, watching us, is burned into my brain. He came back the next day and wanted to apologize to my friend for biting her, but we were too spooked to see him again, so we just left. I was the GM of a nerdy collectibles store in a mall. We closed at 9 p.m. My wife and I were walking to the parking lot with my 17-year-old employee, her mom, and her 14-year-old sister. My wife and I parked closer to the entrance, so I bid them good night and got into my car, and my wife got into hers. That's when I noticed the parking garage had exactly one car in it other than mine and the employee's mom's car. A pickup truck was idling with its lights off at an odd angle, and as soon as my wife and I got into the car, the truck turned its lights on and started creeping toward the two girls and their mom. The truck had a legally dark tint and a license plate obscure. As ex-law enforcement, I knew to trust my gut, and I did not like this. I started my car, turned on my dash cam, and started to put my car between the girls and the truck. The truck sped up, almost hitting me while trying to get around me. Mind you, there was no exit in that part of the garage. The only thing there were the girls and their car. The truck tried again to maneuver around me, but my wife caught on and moved her car to block the truck's access to the girls' car, allowing them to safely enter their vehicle. The truck then peeled out for the exit ramp. I followed, hoping to get footage on my dash cam. After reviewing the footage, I gave mall security a description of the truck and learned that several other mall employees had reported it following them. My employee had managed to get a photo of the license plate. We reported it to the local police, which led to the driver being arrested at the mall a week later on existing warrants. On the train in Vienna, my friend and I caught a guy staring at us without breaking eye contact. I warned her under my breath because I assumed he saw we were obviously tourists. I thought he might try to pickpocket on the way out. Our stop came up, and sure enough, he got off behind us. He seemed to fall behind in the crowd, so I dropped my guard, and we focused on trying to validate our tickets at the exit of the station. I sensed someone behind us, and turned to tell them to go ahead of us. We didn't know how to use the machine, and didn't want to hold anyone back. It was the same guy, and he wasn't waiting to use the machine. He was masturbating. I grabbed my friend and walked briskly away. He kept following us, hands still down his trousers. He only left when we darted into a shop and asked for the police. That guy. We had a car that pulled up in front of our home every single night from about 1:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. For about a month, I convinced myself it was just some person posting up there for some harmless reason, but it never stopped. One night, we called the police, and the second I hung up the phone, the car darted off. Again, convinced myself it was just a coincidence. Then the next night, when he pulled up, I called the cops again, and boom, he darted off again. At that point, I knew something was off. So many times we considered sending my husband out there to bang on the window and ask the guy what he was doing, but I always felt it was too dangerous. The cops basically did nothing and didn't care to help us try and trap the guy. We ended up selling the house because I couldn't sleep there anymore, and I still never found out why that guy was watching us. I'll never forget the creepy-ass car with blackout windows. I grew up near Chicago, and I had paranoia after school because a certain red car would trail me. I would take different ways home every day. After a few weeks of this happening, the school actually called my mom and warned about what they overheard. Not too long after, I was a judge at a skateboarding competition, and I got stabbed in the shoulder in front of 100+ people. Fortunately, it was the shoulder and not the neck like they intended. I was fine, but the cops gave zero shits, and I got a big scar still. That happened 16 years ago, and I still think about it every day. I was on my university campus for a summer class, so there weren't many people around. I needed to take a summer class to graduate on time, as I worked nights during the semester, so my options were limited. Anyway, it was a hot June-July day. I wore a sundress and arrived a bit before class was scheduled to start, so I could review my notes and go through the reading for the lecture. Going through empty hallways, it really doesn't take much to feel like you're being followed or watched. I had taken an odd route to begin with, since I'd parked at the free spots on the street to avoid paying. I had to cross through several areas to get to the humanities building, but it was indoors, so I wasn't getting destroyed by the sun. Moving through the halls toward the classroom, there was no reason for anyone else to be taking that way unless they were in the same class. A few times I turned around and saw someone duck around a corner, but I knew he was there. I'd heard footsteps behind me in the empty corridors. Finally, close enough to the classroom, I ducked into the closet washroom. There was no lock on the external door, but I hoped that a door marked women would be enough. I wanted to believe that I was just imagining things, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. He opened the door. I screamed and forced it shut, but I'll never forget his dark, beady eyes staring at me. This was no pushback, so after a couple of minutes, I went to the furthest stall and locked the door. There was no number for campus security posted anywhere in there, and this was back when I only had a BlackBerry, so the internal browser ordered that shit. I was too nervous to call 911 and blanked on how I could just call the operator to get campus security. I waited in there for what felt like forever. When the door finally opened again, I peeked and recognized a classmate and was able to ask her if any creepy dude was waiting outside. She thankfully said no. There was another time a guy in a silver sports car followed me for several blocks before pulling over and telling me to get in. I don't miss being in my 20s. I, female 21 at the time, had started going on dates and sleeping with a girl, female 23, and found out she had been telling our mutual friends we were in a serious relationship. She stayed an entire weekend at my apartment without us ever discussing that. I was a pushover at the time and had to have my best friend kick her out. I broke up with her the next week, which was a couple of weeks before Valentine's Day. She kept calling and texting, and we would talk a little. I wanted to stay friends because I lived in a small college town with a small, tight-knit LGBTQ community. Then one day, she said she had my Valentine's gift for me. I panicked and said I wouldn't be home all day. She insisted she would wait for me as long as it took. She kept insisting she had to give it to me, and I kept reminding her friends don't usually do Valentine's gifts. My group of friends said this was too far, so I needed to just go stay with them for a while. We ran to my apartment to pack a couple bags and by the time we got there, glued to my front door was my Valentine's gift. I knew then she had to be watching from somewhere. I couldn't see her car in the parking lot, but my apartment was right next to and faces a 200-plus-year-old cemetery, and I knew she was in there watching. There were tons of trees and large monuments to hide behind, and I felt nauseous, not knowing which one she was behind. I stayed with friends for days. Someone would drive me home from my on-campus job in a golf cart every day for weeks once I did go home to my apartment, and every single day I knew she was there watching. Sometimes I would see her car and sometimes I wouldn't, but I was certain she was there. She kept asking for my address so she could send me my things, and I kept insisting she didn't need to. One day, she said, "I mean, it's not like I don't know where you live. Just send me the address." I was more afraid of her than the 200-plus-year-old cemetery right outside my bedroom window.